If I was a bioweapons designer, if I was going to make weapons to destroy people's minds, if Khrushchev sent me to the United States and said, make something that will destroy their minds but not be obvious, I would make NutraSweet. NutraSweet, ironically, is made out of 3 well-known brain toxins. They knew that when they were making it. It's made from phenylalanine, which causes mental retardation in children. You've heard of PKU. That's a buildup of phenylalanine in the blood. They knew that. They knew phenylalanine causes seizures. So part of its molecule is phenylalanine. The other part is aspartic acid, which is a powerful excitotoxin that's almost as powerful as glutamate. And they link it together with something called methanol, wood alcohol. Now, the FDA regulates and the EPA regulates wood alcohol because it's so toxic. And they regulate it in minute quantities. They link these 2 molecules together with methanol, so when you consume it, you're not only getting methanol in your blood, but when methanol is consumed, it's broken down into 2 substances, formic acid and formaldehyde. Formic acid is what makes you hurt so bad. That's where I live. But a thing, that's what is released when you consume NutraSweet, formic acid, all through your body in very, very minute quantity. The formaldehyde is probably more toxic. And there's a recent paper just came out in which they studied feeding aspartame to experimental animals and found that the formaldehyde that breaks down enters the cell, attacks the DNA, and breaks the DNA in several areas. And that DNA in humans is removed very slowly. It's hard for our metabolism to remove formaldehyde, so it stays there a long time. And they found that each dose accumulates. So every time you drink a 12-ounce Diet Coke, you're accumulating formaldehyde on your DNA and producing DNA damage. And that's why the people get progressively worse and worse and worse the more they drink it. And I've seen people that were so sick. I had a lady in my office that came to me for NutraSweet poisoning. She was so sick, she told her husband, I can't work anymore. I'm going to have to go to a job. She said, I can't hardly get out of bed. I can hardly, her vision was blurred. She couldn't think. She was just miserable. So I put her on some nutritional changes, took her off the NutraSweet and the MSG, and she came back in 2 weeks. She said, I can't believe it. It's like I've been reborn. Amen. Everywhere I go and speak, she comes. She says, I got to tell everybody. She said, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. She said, I never dreamed that something was making me this sick. If you look at the FDA's list of complaints, 80% of all the complaints they get about everything, 80% of them are about NutraSweet. And the list of complaints goes all the way from sudden blindness. We've had, I don't know how many people go blind in one or both eyes. Confusion, dizziness, mental problems, inability to think and remember, seizures, and they list under other death. There has been quite a few NutraSweet deaths that they don't tell you about because people now are drinking these things quarts at a time, 3 quarts a day. I get calls from all over the United States about people who've developed brain tumors because that's why NutraSweet lost its approval originally. When they first applied for a permit to the FDA, the cereal company which made NutraSweet did their own experiment, and in their own experiment, it increased brain tumors 47-fold. And so it was immediately rejected. They said, well, this is way too, and it was dose-related. Exposed to, the higher the incidence. From the lowest dose to the highest dose, they all had increased brain tumors. So it lost its approval. Now, the FDA that came on after that, Arthur Hall Hayes, he was the commissioner. He got together a board of physicians to review the safety of MSG. On that board were 3 neuroscientists, very well-known, respected neuroscientists, and they said, we recommend that this not be approved. It is too bad that are going on with the brain tumors is too great a concern We recommend it not be approved. Guess what happened? It got approved. And the interesting thing is that several months after it was approved, he left the FDA and went to work for the public relations firm for the NutraSweet. This is not an unusual thing we see in our society. Regulatory agencies are bought by the companies that regulate. They promise them a review of the FDA, and they find out 45 top regulators of the FDA and went to work for the companies they regulate. There's a recent scandal about a diabetic drug that was released. They had a dozen deaths from it. They did an investigation and found out that the FDA authorities who approved it were receiving funds from the company that made the drug, to the tune of $8,000 and more. The American Dietetic Association thinks about how safe NutraSweet is. They have their own journals, their own organizations. They tell the dietitians this. They're constantly saying how safe NutraSweet is. They receive thousands of dollars from the NutraSweet company, from Monsanto. Monsanto sponsors all of their functions, all of their journals. They have full-page ads in all their journals. Back cover ads, the most expensive ad in the whole magazine. The American Diabetes Association receives tons of money from the Monsanto company. American Diabetic Association journals advertise heavily for NutraSweet. So we don't see a lot of biased literature there. Of course, Monsanto contributes a lot of money to the universities to make sure that the research goes their way. They fund research by scientists to make sure they'll produce papers that will say it's safe, so that when the commentator from 60 Minutes or somewhere else goes to them and says, well, what about these safety issues? They say, oh, look, we have this stack of studies here that it's safe, and these are big in the research field. And in the early days, what happened to Ralph Nader, he was overwhelmed by it. I answered that. Well, fortunately, in 1996, it was Dr. Ralph Walton, who was in medicine at Ohio State University, and he looked at 160 examined the safety of NutraSweet just to see how biased they were. Out of those 74 were directly sponsored by the Monsanto company. 90 of them were not funded by the industry. Now, of the independent, 9 one or more problems with NutraSweet. Of the independent studies that did not have problems, 7 of them were in fact sponsored by the FDA, so they weren't really independent either. Of the 74 papers that were sponsored by the NutraSweet company, 100% of them claimed it was safe. So these are the things that are done, and these are the studies that the national media quote. This is the stuff that comes out in your newspapers quoting that it's safe. Now here we go to the brilliant things your government industry coalition is doing to you. And what you have to remember is our country is changing. We're no longer a free enterprise country. We have become more a fascist country. Fascism is a union between industry and government. That's how it differs from communism. Rather than like communists going and shooting all of the managers of business, they form a coalition with them. They say, together, I'll protect you, you protect me, you make sure I stay in power, I'll make sure your product's the only one on this line, and that nobody criticizes you. Well, these geniuses have now, they're not satisfied that we can tell you that MSG is bad, get fresh vegetables from your farm. They're going to spray them before you get them. So they're talking about vegetables with MSG. There's a referendum here in California in which they're applying to be able to add MSG to wine. All along, they have been injecting excitotoxins into poultry. That's very common. Bill Clinton, Mr. Tyson, he injects all of his chickens with excitotoxins. That's why they taste good. They add NutraSweet to medicines, to children's medicines particularly. And we found that added to medicine produces physiological effects on these children, behavioral effects. You just have to throw in the fluoride because I'm appalled that a dental society can convince the government to add a toxic substance as toxic as fluoride is. Fluoride is a halogen. Halogens are enormously reactive chemicals. They put a halogen in the water supply. For what? So you have nice teeth. The studies have, since all this has been done, have shown that it has not reduced cavities at all. So you've added a neurotoxin in the recent studies. There's a lot of recent literature out on fluoride and brain development showing it causes neurobehavioral difficulties. It's destroying the intellect of children. And they put it in all the toothpaste. It's hard to find toothpaste except in your health food store that does not have fluoride in it. And read the package on the fluoride toothpaste, what it says. Children under 6 must be supervised when brushing with this, and if they should swallow it, notify poison control or get them to the emergency room immediately. Now, why is something that toxic in your toothpaste? That's on the package. Now, the grapefruit seed extract makes a good tooth wash. Grapefruit seed extract will kill almost any bacteria, protozoa, fungus. You can make a dilute solution and brush your teeth with that. It's much better than any toothpaste that's ever been made. So I thought I would share some of these brilliant things our government has done.